Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar. We are going to be talking about where can a PhD in bioethics take you? So just for a matter of introduction, I want to start with, I'm Dr. Leah Jeanette. I'm the Assistant Director of Education in Bioethics and Medical Humanities, and the Director of our Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program here at Case Western Reserve University in the School of Medicine. And with me, I have Dr. Marsha Michie. She's an Associate Professor of Bioethics, the Associate Director of the Bioethics Center for Change, which is a community, health, and genomic equity. And she's also the co-director for the PhD in Bioethics program. Dr. Michie, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us, I think, a little bit more about your background before we get started? I think would be a great place for us to start.
Sure. So like most people who work in bioethics, I don't actually have a PhD in bioethics. My PhD is in the social sciences and anthropology, but all of my work is situated in the space of biomedical ethics and health ethics and the ways that primarily genetics and reproductive issues affect people's lives. I do a lot of work interviewing pregnant people and their families, talking to physicians and regulators and scientists about new technologies in genomics and reproduction and gene editing and lots of exciting new areas. And then, of course, I teach in our department and co-direct the PhD in bioethics program, which is really so much fun. I love interacting with students and mentoring them.
Thank you. So today for our webinar, we are going to talk a little bit about Case Western Reserve University and our School of Medicine. We'll then go into the PhD bioethics program. We'll talk about curriculum, things like mentorship, research and teaching, talk about funding, and of course, career opportunities. We'll cover the application process and deadlines, and then we're going to save, hopefully, the last chunk of time for Q&A. We've already had a number of pre-submitted questions, but we'll also be able to take your questions live. Here on Zoom, there is a feature. If you look for this Q&A button, you should be able to submit your question. We will wait till the end to answer those questions, but feel free to submit them at any point during the presentation. So Dr. Michie, I'm going to turn this over to you to talk a little bit about Case Western Reserve School of Medicine and kind of where we are as a department positioned within the university.
Sure. So the Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine is one of the best schools of medicine in the country. In the top 25, we are number 22 in receiving NIH funding for our research, and of course, number 1 in Ohio. And within the School of Medicine, our bioethics department is, in fact, a fully funded department within the School of Medicine. A lot of bioethics takes place in centers or institutes or sort of temporary divisions within universities. We are a full-fledged department, and we get a lot of support from the School of Medicine. We're so happy that we have a terrific relationship with our dean and with the leadership in the School of Medicine, and interact a lot with our partners across the university.
So one of the questions I think we get a lot, and I think it's important to answer before we specifically talk about the PhD program, is why study bioethics and medical humanities? Why is this field relevant? Why, frankly, why should we care, or why should anyone care?
For sure. Well, I mean, you have it here on the slide. Healthcare impacts us all, no question, at every point in our lives. And I tend to study, because I study reproductive ethics, I tend to study more at the beginning of life. Bioethics is so relevant there. It's also really, really relevant at the end of life for so many people, and then everything in between, because I mean, we all have bodies and we all have health, and the ethics of how we interact with healthcare institutions and how our health changes over our lives and how we understand that is super important. I also work really a lot in the area of new technology, and that is an area where bioethics is particularly relevant. We have new science and technology all the time that's being developed, in my case, often in genetics. And we think about where should we intervene? How should we guide these technologies as they come to patients and families and impact the health of our whole society? And what kinds of values should inform that in research, in translation, in clinical practice? And how can we guide those technologies and all, in fact, of biomedicine in ways that ensure justice for all kinds of populations and respect for persons, which is a prime, of course, value of bioethics, respect for persons in both research and clinical practice. So, I mean, these are big questions, and there are so many different takes on them. I have been working in this field for so long, and I continue all the time to find new questions within this big umbrella of bioethics and medical humanities that are really super animating and important, really crucial for us.
So I think it's great now for us to kind of pivot into talking specifically about our PhD in bioethics program. As you can see on the slide, in 2004, our Department of Bioethics here at Case Western created the first PhD in bioethics program in the United States. We're very proud of the work we did to create that program and the continuation of this program. It's well respected across the country. And this goes back to what Dr. Michie was saying, because of our department itself and our position within the School of Medicine. But as you can see, our mission really is to train scholars to conceptualize, design, and conduct both normative ethical analysis and empirical research on issues in bioethics and medical humanities. And that is a pretty broad concept. And so there's a lot of directions to take with where that expertise can lie for our students. You will see it reflected in our faculty, and our students themselves can really focus in on areas of expertise within this very broad kind of mission itself.
I'll just add that it's not unusual for people to come out of philosophy programs with an emphasis in bioethics or biomedical ethics. But one thing that makes our program quite different is that we are not a social science program. We're also not a philosophy program. We're a bioethics program. And so we really emphasize that our students need to come out with expertise in both normative ethical analysis and in various kinds of ethical empirical research, including quantitative and qualitative, and in the methods that are used in medical and health humanities. And that is a very broad-based grounding that we ask of all of our students. And then you get to take a deep dive into one particular area that really facilitates your own research questions.
So kind of going along those lines, these are really kind of our objectives for our graduates throughout their time in our program. Dr. Michie, can you speak a little bit more about this as one of the co-directors of the program?
Sure. So as I said, the philosophical basis of bioethics and normative analysis is, of course, really the ground of bioethics itself. And so we emphasize that in our program. We have a lot of expertise in that area among our faculty. So that is something that our PhD students are required to really get their feet grounded in. And then we ask them to develop a theoretical perspective to guide their research and to guide the way that they craft their research questions. And that might be from within bioethics itself, or it might be from other areas of our university, from sociology or public health, or somewhere where you're finding that there's a really good theorization of the particular issues that you're interested in. We have particular requirements for empirical methodology, as I said, qualitative and quantitative, and that allows you to conduct empirical research on bioethics problems. It also means that even if you are not a statistician, even if you are not an ethnographer, whatever it is, you probably, if you do any kind of research in bioethics, are going to work in teams with people who have this kind of expertise, and you need to be able to speak that language and communicate well with them. I myself am not a quantitative researcher, but I do lots of mixed methods research with people who do have that expertise, and I need to be able to speak that language with them. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And that helps you to become a scholar who can then develop your own questions, research questions that are meaningful in bioethics, and conceptualize how to answer those questions in meaningful ways. And so through that process, we mentor you in preparing publications and presentations, how to present your work effectively, and how to compete for academic positions, including, in the medical space, you often need grant funding to get your research done and to advance your career. But it could be from a lot of different sources, from the U.S. government, NIH or NSF, from private foundations, from other sources, and we support you in a process of doing that and crafting a research proposal for those kinds of grant opportunities.
So that's translated all of the things that we're looking to train our graduate students in. It's translated really well into our curriculum, into our 5 core areas. As you can see, we have normative and social science theory and methods, research ethics, clinical ethics, medical humanities and social medicine, and public health ethics. And these are areas that our faculty have different expertises in. And so you're going to see how this is taught in a myriad of ways because of their expertise. Dr. Mick, do you want to add anything else about kind of this overview of these areas?
Oh, I'll just agree with you. Bioethics and medical humanities is a super broad field. And so the reason why we tell you this is because there are areas in biomedical ethics or bioethics that are not maybe a big specialization of our department. There are people who are very interested in animal ethics or environmental ethics. And although we have people who have work that touches on that, that's not really the core of our department. We have really core expertise in these areas. And these are areas that if it all encompasses what you're interested in, we're very confident that we can guide you in that. And so as you can see on this next slide, the particular strengths of our department include clinical ethics, including Dr. Jeanette here, but also our chair and many other of our faculty do clinical ethics consultation as part of their job, have a lot of expertise in that space. My expertise tends to fall in the ethical and social issues in genetics and genomics, but that also includes some issues around stem cell research and biomedical engineering. And we have lots of other faculty who do that work as well, both in the primary faculty and the secondary faculty. We have a growing and very strong emphasis in medical and health humanities and social medicine. I think as a social scientist, I probably fall in more of the social medicine camp, but we also have faculty who come out of literature and psychology and theology and all kinds of interesting takes on medical and health humanities, and really are leaders in the fields of medical and health humanities. So we're excited about that growing area of our department. And then research ethics and public health ethics are core parts of bioethics. We have multiple faculty with expertise in these areas, people who have masters in public health or work on IRBs, work in the areas of research and translational ethics, and can guide students who have interest in those really rich literatures and areas of scholarship within bioethics.
So we would be remiss if we didn't kind of break down how the curriculum is actually structured. So you can see year 1 and 2 really focuses on your core courses, on obtaining really the focus in the classroom setting. And year 2 is going to end with your comprehensive exams. From there, year 3 and 4 focuses on your dissertation. Of course, there's other things that are done within each of these year category. In year 3 and even in year 4, students can participate in research, conferences, publication, and applying for next steps. So there's a lot to do within this program, but this is just a very simplistic view of kind of the curriculum over several years.
For sure. And we do have a particular schedule for at least the first 2 years that we try to guide you through in terms of the core courses in the department, and then the electives that you would take that would direct you towards your particular area of interest, ending with the comprehensive exams. We know that sometimes there are complicating factors, but our goal is to get you through this program in a timely manner so that you can get on with the career that you really want to get to. And so this is a little bit of an ideal schedule in that in year 3, you'd be researching your dissertation. In year 4, you'd be writing and finishing and defending. It doesn't always follow exactly the schedule, but this is really our sort of map that we've laid out for you, and it's entirely doable. I know that in my field of anthropology, 4 years is probably not entirely realistic. In this field, it actually is. You could finish in 4, maybe 5 years without really straying at all from a reasonable academic schedule. And especially with the kind of mentorship that we have, because of the way our program is designed, I think it's very realistic for you to do this.
So another question that we consistently get has to do with funding. Dr. Michie, do you want to talk just briefly about how our funding model works?
Sure. I'm so proud to say that we support all tuition for our PhD students through our department and through the School of Medicine. As a department in the School of Medicine, we have a certain amount of privilege that maybe a center or an institute doesn't have, and part of that is that we get the same tuition coverage that the basic science and clinical sciences departments get, which is coverage for our PhD students, and what's not covered by the School of Medicine, we take up as a department because we think that's really essential. And in year one, the School of Medicine has guaranteed for us that they will cover the stipend for the first year. And that's the same stipend for every student in the medical school, in the PhD programs in the medical school, which is $37,000 for the upcoming year. And then it gets updated every year for cost of living. After the first year, we do not guarantee a stipend because the School of Medicine does not give us that money, but we do our very best to cover it, help you cover it either through research or teaching, or other opportunities. Some of our students have outside positions, maybe teaching positions, maybe research positions that they don't need funding from us. Others find work within the university, even within our department, maybe on grant-funded research to help them cover that, or teaching classes for us. But we are committed to help you cover all those costs so that you're not finding yourself tremendously in debt at the end of your PhD, which I know is a problem for many students. It was for me. I didn't have this kind of opportunity, so I'm thrilled that we are able to do this.
Dr. Michie, I'm right with you. I completely am thrilled that this is something we can offer all our students. And I will say that year two, I know that makes a lot of students or applicants nervous, but I see how hard you and the other co-director of our program work with students on this issue to help find that funding source.
Right. And all the students that we have in our program right now, it's a small program, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that's one of the reasons all the students currently in our program have that coverage, even though they're no longer in their first year. So we can't make promises because we want to make sure that we can keep any promises that we make, but we do make a promise that we will do our very best. And so far, we've been able to do it. We admit a very small cohort of 4 PhD students every other year. Now, that's why, because we give them extensive financial support. We give them intensive mentorship and training. And like almost every bioethics program in the country, we have, a limited number of faculty. We're not a humongous department like a biology department. And so we want to make sure that every single PhD student has that kind of intensive training, because that's what a PhD program is. It's not like an undergraduate program where you go to classes and you go home. You develop very close relationships with mentors that require a lot of time on our part. And so we want to make sure that we have capacity to do that. And it also gives us the opportunity to give you a lot of opportunities for teaching, for research, for clinical consultation training, if that's what you're interested in. Certainly everyone does clinical consultation as part of the program, or learns about how that works. But some people really want to dive more into that. That's great. Not everybody does. Some people are really excited about teaching, others aren't. But we want to make sure that you learn how to do these things, that you're able to fulfill some of these roles, so that you can help fund yourself, so that you are a great candidate for future job opportunities as well. And our students have come from so many diverse backgrounds, and we welcome students from lots of diverse backgrounds. Several of our students currently came in with an MA in bioethics or a related field, some from our department, but that is not a requirement. We have other students that have come from public health. A lot of students in bioethics come from biomedical science or social science, like me. Many come from philosophy, like our chair, and other people in our department. And as I said before, a lot of our faculty come from the arts and humanities. So we welcome students from those backgrounds too, and certainly from the law, because law is a big part of bioethics, and several of our faculty have law degrees, and we see that as an important part of our field. So that's what our program looks like, is very small. Every other year we admit PhD students, and this happens to be one of those years. But that does mean that we have to be a little bit selective because we're not going to admit more students than we can support, either financially or academically.
So where do our students then go after our program, Dr. Michie?
Well, lots of places. A lot of them become academics. I mean, I think when you get a PhD, that often is the goal, to become a academic in some kind of way. And so many of our graduates have ended up in academic bioethics centers or clinical and basic science departments in medical schools or schools of public health. In fact, the vice chair of our department has a PhD in bioethics from our program. He was one of the very first graduates of our program, and now is a very successful researcher and teacher and vice chair of the department. A lot of folks become independent investigators. One thing that is great about bioethics PhDs is they can often serve as a bridge between folks who are in the traditional medical humanities and those who are in clinical and basic science departments, because we sort of have a foot in both worlds. We also have had graduates go on to work for government agencies, perhaps in regulatory roles or other kinds of advising roles in terms of policy, or in public policy institutes, maybe nonprofits. Bioethics is so diverse that we can't even imagine where you might end up. But these are some places that folks with PhDs in bioethics do often end up, and folks from our MA program as well. So we don't narrow that vision at all. We think it should be a big vision.
So our PhD admission process, you submit your application online. We do ask for transcripts from all undergrad and graduate institutions. Any place that you have taken courses or received any type of degree, you need to submit. Unofficial is fine for the admission process or the application review process. If you are admitted to the program, we would need official transcripts at that point. We ask for a CV or your resume, 3 letters of recommendation. We have a personal statement that we ask for, and there are specific questions that we're looking for. Questions like, why do you want a PhD in bioethics? What is your area of interest? And are there faculty that you're interested in working with? So it's important to make sure you're addressing those questions. You can see a copy of those questions both listed on our website and in the application itself. We ask for a writing sample, so something no more than 25 pages. You can be a single author, but if it's multiple authors, you should be the first author and then explaining your contribution and others' contribution as authors. Graduate test scores are optional. And if you're an international student, there are some requirements for English test scores or transcript evaluations. If you have further questions on those things, they need to be actually directed to graduate studies, and we're happy to connect you with them. In terms of our timeline, we are taking admissions currently, as Dr. Michie said earlier. Anywhere between December and March, our admissions committee is going to meet on and off and be reviewing applications. The final deadline to apply is January 15th, 2024. Our goal is that in early March, we would notify applicants of the decisions regarding admission. And for those who receive an admission offer, the deadline to enroll would be April 15th. We have orientation in August, and then the fall semester starts August 26th. I know that this timeline seems far away, but time moves very quickly. And so we would encourage you to start on your application now so that you can take your time and get the pieces together, and you can write this personal statement you want, get the letters you want in, and so you're not rushing when January hits. Anything else to add about the application, Dr. Michie?
People often ask, and it's possible, I haven't looked at the Q&A, it's possible this is one of the questions in the Q&A, about this question that we ask in the personal statement about who would you want to work with. And they ask, is that really required? Yes, it is. And it's required because of what I said about this being an intensive program, as any PhD ideally is, that you are going to work intensively with 1, 2, 3 people. And we want to make sure that you're compatible with the expertise and the availability of those people. We're matching you to advisors and mentors. And if if the perfect person for you is here in our department, but they already have 8 advisees and they can't take any more, that's important to us because we want to make sure that we have the capacity to give you what you need. On the other hand, people with really great applications, but they don't match the interests of anyone in our department also might not be compatible for our department. It's not just about being the smartest or being the best. It's about being a right fit for the expertise that we can offer.
So I'm going to turn us to some questions. Dr. Michie, I'm going to give you a question to kind of start with as I kind of look through the questions that have been submitted. So going along the lines of this application discussion, what type of writing sample is best for the application? Must it be bioethics related?
I think it should be related to bioethics or medical humanities. It does not have to be a published article. It could be if you've published something that you're first author on or solo author, that's great. If not, that's also fine. A paper that you wrote in a master's program or an undergraduate program that has bioethics content and you think best exhibits both your best work and also some of the things that you're interested in about bioethics and medical humanities. It doesn't matter if it's published or not in that way, but if you have a publication that you'd like to showcase and send to us, that's also great.
So there's a question about how many applications does the program typically receive?
That's so hard to say. I mean, it really is. During the pandemic, we didn't get nearly as many. I think this year we'll get a lot more. I don't think it will be 500, but I also don't think it's going to be 30. I think it's going to probably be in the 100 range. I'm not sure. I'm just making guesses. So I can't give you a really solid denominator on that. What I can tell you is we just don't have the capacity to admit more than 4, and we're going to get a lot more than 4 applicants. So that means we have to be highly selective. It's just the nature of a PhD program, certainly ours.
So we're getting a couple questions about this idea of like a faculty mentorship or an advisor. So there's a question about, I don't know any faculty members. Will that affect my matching? There's another question about, can we add someone who is related to the ethical field? Maybe they're outside the institution, but is known for clinical ethics, or do they need to be specifically in the department?
Right. So if there's somebody you want to work with on your PhD, they have to be affiliated with our department because we have you for your dissertation, you're going to have to be mentored by somebody who has an appointment in our department. Other people on your committee, it is possible to have some people from outside our department or outside our institution, but your core advisor, your core research mentor has to be in our department. And there's a great list on our website that includes bios of all of our faculty, both primary and secondary, and that's easy to review and look at. Another thing I would suggest is go and look at their publications. Go onto PubMed or Google Scholar and look and see what people have published. That'll give you an idea of a little bit more about their expertise. You don't have to know them personally. If you want to separately contact a faculty member who's associated with our program and set up a meeting with them or a phone call to talk about your application, that's absolutely fine. They don't have the final decision, but they can certainly tell you whether they think that you're compatible with them as an advisor. If you haven't had a chance to do that, that's okay. You can still put them down. But I think that personal contact can be really helpful if you are able to do that.
Right. I would say simply connecting with the person doesn't guarantee, admission either. Right. As Dr. Michie said earlier, it really is like this matching, this mutual fit that we're looking for. So we may have many students who list the same, faculty member. Well, they can't take all 4 of the incoming students. That's just not a reasonable mentorship model. And so we have to also think about, as Dr. Michie said earlier, what our capacity of our department and individual faculty can handle.
Sure, exactly. I think that's well put.
So there's some questions about like international applicants. I will say international applicants, domestic students or domestic applicants are all reviewed in the same way. The funding works the same way. for the tuition coverage, for the stipend. So I think that's probably all I need to say right now about international students.
If you are an international student, and you're here after that first year and you're looking for work to support your living expenses, recognize that there are visa requirements often to work in the US. It might vary whether it's in the university or outside the university. So those are things you need to consider, but it's not going to affect our review of your application because that's more about your compatibility with the program intellectually and in terms of your goals.
Can you speak to the diversity of the faculty in our department? I think that's a great question.
Sure. Well, I mean, we have to think about a lot of different angles on diversity. If you're talking about racial and ethnic diversity, we do have some. Bioethics tends not to be that diverse a field, as many medical fields are not. But I think we're moving in that direction, as bioethics as a whole is. And you're welcome to look at our faculty listing to see what that looks like. In terms of disciplinary diversity, we have a lot of that, a lot of folks from many, many different disciplines. And I think in terms of age and orientation to the discipline, we have a lot of diversity in that some departments tend to be very sort of top heavy with a lot of older faculty, or some departments tend to be very young with a lot of younger faculty. I think we have a great diversity in that way, with senior members who really have a great institutional and disciplinary memory, and younger folks who are just coming into the field and really have a lot of energy and new directions to their research.
So we are at time. What I will say is if you have specific questions about your application, your situation, you have questions about potential things related to your transcripts or your writing sample or your personal statement, please reach out to us. I think that's the best way, because trying to give general answers doesn't always apply to everyone. And so we want, or trying to give specific answers doesn't always apply to everyone. We try to give general answers on this. The best way to contact us is bioethics@case.edu. From there, we can connect you with the right people, including Dr. Michie or myself, or other faculty in the department if you're looking to connect with them as well. I want to thank Dr. Michie so much for your time. Any final thoughts that you want to
I
share?
just want to say about this address, bioethics@case.edu. It looks impersonal, but I want you to know that we read every single email that comes to that, and we try our very best to give you a very personal response to every one of them. If for some reason you don't hear back from us and you need to, just send us another email. It's possible that we missed it. It was on a weekend or something happened, or we were traveling, and that is never our intention to ignore an email to you from you. So please recognize that we're academics, we're busy, things happen, but if you don't hear from us, email us again, because we would like to connect you personally.
So thanks again to everybody who is in attendance, or for those who are watching the recording. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to hopefully reviewing your application.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.